Welcome to These Kids Can't Wait, discovering the world of rare disease. Welcome back to These Kids Can't Wait, where we spotlight change makers in the community, making a real difference through innovation, service, and community leadership. Today's guest is Kristin Andrus, founder of Gathering for Impact Sister Goods and also the head of the Andrus Family Foundation. She's a passionate advocate for families, women, and the vulnerable communities across Utah. She's a mother of 6 and leads with heart, action, and a boots on the ground approach. We'll talk about the purpose that drives her, how she stays grounded, and what meaningful impact looks like. Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where did this life of service all begin?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, I grew up in a home where my parents were always, going out and doing good. So they were always the first to volunteer, to show up, to help, to sign up. And so that was just the culture in my home. We were gatherers. We would have people over, whether it was family or friends or neighbors. I think my parents are they're social people who love hosting and cooking and gathering. But then also, they were blessed with a lot, and so they also knew that they needed to give back, but not that they needed to. I think they wanted to, right? So if the swim team didn't have a director, and my dad was a stockbroker at the time in San Francisco, my dad's like, I can do it. He had no business being the swim team director, but he knew that they needed help. And he had 4 kids there. My mom was in the junior league. She was always, delivering meals, helping someone, visiting, people that couldn't get out of their homes, buying groceries. And by the way, still does that today. I'm 46. And so 50 years later, they are still going about doing good every single day. So watching that, I remember being in college. I came out from the Bay Area to the University of Utah. And I was like a little bit bored, a little bit trying to figure out what this new life looked like on my own. And I remember thinking like, I need to do something. I need to help somebody. And not because of my parents, but probably just because there wasn't any of that going on without having my family involvement. So I did the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and a girl and I became friends and mentors, and I got to know this new little world of this woman and her mom, and seeing a lot of the things that were going on in her life and barriers that they had. And so I'd say that was the first aha moment of like on my own, figuring out that this is something that I probably want to incorporate into my life. So I always had, service here and there. It was always important to me to give back. I remember having kids thinking, what can we go do? And, dropping off Egg McMuffins during the cold winter months in Salt Lake City, or, getting diapers and dropping them off. And then I think with the social media, as my Instagram grew, I realized I can do a little bit as one woman, but I can do a lot more if I invite other women to come along with me. And so what I would say about that beginning part is none of that is about money. None of that is about having the financial means to do anything. None of that really cost anything. Um, it was just this urge to kind of do a little bit more and to look outside of myself and say, I have a lot and I can help. And then seeing, oh my gosh, a lot of these women and families are actually looking to give back. They're looking for ways to lean in and contribute. And so that kind of became my shtick, you could say, on social media, was everyone was selling dish towels and Stanley cups. And I'm like, what if we sell? What if I sell? What if I share this like incredible richness and depth in life of giving back and contribution and showing up in your community and being curious and asking questions? So I kind of became known for that. And the final answer is personally, we had a couple of a little bit later, around the same time, we had some financial successes, and it became clear that our life could change, or we could kind of choose a path of consumption and buying. I have no interest in that. I think stuff is stressful. And so I remember one day when the transaction was completed, I reached out to Jeremy and I felt a heaviness and a stewardship and a responsibility I didn't know was going to literally fall over me. And I said, we need to go serve. And so we had little kids and we got them out of school and we went down to the VOA Youth Resource Center and we served a meal and we brought food. And it was like, this is the path. And so some of that philanthropy, I'd say, is like a little bit more private. People don't necessarily know what we do with our family like that, but the public side of it has been just really fulfilling because it's a gap that not a lot of people are filling for families to say, how do I give back in this community? What does this look like? So
Yeah. And I love that you learned that boots on the ground method early on in life, and you're passing that on to your kids. And I've heard you talk about your family motto in the past. Will you share that with our listeners?
yeah, so we talk about getting our hands dirty and our hearts a little broken. And we, in the beginning, really what I would say like took over our hearts in terms of philanthropy or giving back was really working with refugee families. And what we realized as we, went to their apartment and sat on their floor with them and worked through really, really hard stuff was that you can write a check to a refugee organization or you can go buy a backpack and drop it off. And all of that is awesome and good. But really, philanthropy is it's a love of humanity, right? That's what the word means. And it's sitting with people in their stories and realizing, one, that you need them more than they need you, right? Like we have so much to learn and we can come in, fix it all, and really we learn so much from them. And we learn what real barriers look like. We learn, what Section 8 housing is, what is, just all chronic illness. Like there's just suicide ideation. There's like so many things that we learned through working with these families that broke our heart, like literally every day. I remember I didn't go to their house every day, but I went a lot to this one particular family for years. And I just had a pit in my stomach every time I drove there because I knew it was going to be hard. And I knew I was going to be upset that the kid was on video games for 24 hours a day. And one kid wouldn't get out of their room and the mom was still in bed and they didn't go to school, right? The list was so long. But when I sat with them and understood what is actually going on, that is where it broke my heart, got my hands dirty in terms of I was in it, right? I wasn't sending a $5, $25 to a refugee organization. I was sitting with this family in their hard. And it breaks your heart, but it keeps you coming back. You can give $25 a month to any organization, but until you know a person, you sit with a person, a family, whatever that looks like for you, that is where your heart changes. That is where real change and transformation and contribution can help, because I can say all day long, why aren't you going to school? Why aren't you going to school? And until I sit with them and they say, well, my mom's still in bed. She hasn't gone out of bed for 3 days. My alarm clock has no more batteries. We don't have money for batteries. I can't find my backpack and I only have one shoe. Like that's the answer why they're not at school, not because they're lazy kids or because they love video games, right? So I understood that my answers were never the right answers, and that breaking down of just what we think is normal and expected, even here in the United States, it was painful and hard, but the rapport that was built, the amount that I learned sitting with that just one particular family, and I've had multiple families, it broke my heart, and it was not easy work. What I will say too is that their dad was in jail because of domestic violence, which was a big part of this situation. And because of towards the end of COVID, I think he ended up getting out, and which was just devastating, of course, for the family. And they'd been shunned by their community because divorce and that kind of stuff is not. And then he, after years and years and years of work with them, he then took them to Minnesota to other Somali families. They're a Somali family, and I would say I lost them. And so what I think is fascinating and disturbing and crazy about the story is after years and years and years, I was like, did I do anything? He got out. The abuser got out, and then he took the family with him to Minnesota, and they're gone. Like poof, they're gone. And I have found them since. But it was like, is this a story of failure? And I think it's not. I think it's not, because our family and multiple families who knew them grew and understood things at a different level and can now fight and advocate and help for families just like them. These kids know in Minneapolis, where they live now, that a woman named, they always called me Christina, loved them in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I was devastated. Like, all of this work, all of this time for nothing. But then I realized, no, because I was in it, it was not wasted.
Sorry, what organization did you do this work through?
You know what? I just knew an amazing case manager. The story is actually a really cool story. There was Live Your Dreams Foundation, which is gives scholarships for single moms. My friend Katie Bennell runs that. Is single mom scholarships for education. Reached out and said, we just have all of these Utah women. We don't have any refugees. We don't have any immigrants. Like, do you know any that we could put up for the scholarship? And then you also got $2,000 and a Christmas tree and, this whole holiday thing plus the scholarship. So I reached out to a case manager that I knew through a couple layers of friends. And she wrote 8 bios of women from all over the world and told me their story and said, you can nominate these. By the time I got those biographies of these incredible women who lived no less than 5 miles from me here in Utah, I read them all. I'm weeping. I turn them in, and it's like, oh, it's past. Like, the scholarship's already been given. It's too late. But I'm sitting there literally holding 8 stories of these women, worse than a movie. They were all in domestic violence situations currently, or getting out of them. And I thought, I can't let these women go. And so I reached out to this case manager and I said, can I find some friends that can give these women this holiday? Most of them were Muslim, so it wasn't Christmas, but this holiday, they need this. And we're not going to come in as like here's for the holidays and we're out, but like a long-term mentorship. So we've ended up with probably over 20 families of this mentor-mentee relationship, where it's not a handout, it's friendship, it's not rides, but it's how do you take the bus, right? And so we get together once a quarter, and it's becoming a really incredible friendship. And it just started by, I'm always kind of doing things a little bit like behind the scenes, because it was like, I can't let these go. And there wasn't a formal organization that was doing it, but I knew these women had a really special place in our hearts. And I wish I had time to tell you all of the incredible stories that happened with these 8 women. It's been pretty remarkable.
So the next question that I have is that you're at the helm of the Andrus Family Foundation. Can you share a little bit about its mission and the values that guide your family?
Yes. So I'm actually not from Utah. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, but I've really grown to love where I live. I've gotten really, really involved, as we talked about, with refugees, with different vulnerable populations, that we decided that we really wanted to give back where we live, and that we wanted to give back locally, and that you could, go anywhere around the world and there's so much need, but there's actually a lot of need 2 miles away from our house. So we started really trying to find organizations and ways that not only could we help, with donations, but we could bring our kids. So there was an organization that's still around that we love and we still donate to today, called Kids Eat. And what I loved about them originally, 10 years ago, was that I could take my kids on a Wednesday and we could fill food bags for weekend food kits. And so we would really find ways to get involved where our kids can get involved. It wasn't, once again, just a check, but it was that we wanted to get our hands in it. We wanted to be a part of it. We wanted to understand what the need was. It was really also important to not only just provide Band-Aids,
Mhm.
but to, go upstream a little bit and say, why are these families needing food bags every single weekend? How can, I thought even just if a portion of philanthropic families in our area were looking upstream, what could we do so that we're not having to do coat drives and food drives and, all of that kind of band-aid work, which is also important. And then I started getting really involved in policy efforts and the Utah Period Project and teen centers, which once again, my kids could be a part of, with the Utah Period Project, when we provided through the policy project and legislation here, free period products for all girls in every K through 12 bathroom. It became very personal when my daughter went to her school who wasn't doing it and said, hey, my mom's doing this for the entire state, and yet we don't have it here, and advocated for herself to her principal, and then went back a couple months later when they had put pads in all the bathrooms and said, this is great, thank you so much, but actually all the girls want tampons. So just these
Oh.
really cool stories of, it's not just about me or about, funding different efforts, but how can our family be involved? How can we make real impact? And so locally is where we built a school in India recently, which was incredible. And we were able to go there, and we've done other things, but any nonprofit I'm working with, I tell them I want to be involved. And I talked to you a little bit about, I'm not going to necessarily sit on your board and sit there for the minutes and, as a formal role, but let me come in on special projects. Let me lean in where maybe you need more people brought to the gala, or let's bring people to come and show up and clean out the kids' library, like whatever it is. And let's rally the community around what you're doing. And so the Andrus Family Foundation is, truthfully, I don't talk about it a lot. It's kind of a behind the scenes way that we're able to give. And I always say that the least interesting part about our family or our foundation is the money that we give. To me, it's like not interesting or unique at all. What's interesting about us is I'd like to think that we have a platform of engaging with the community, to invite them to come with us and to find out and to be curious about what's going on, to lean in their community, and then also help nonprofits. So a lot of my foundation work has been around seeing the gap between nonprofits not working together, working in silos, and that I actually have a really neat opportunity, not only as a donor, but kind of as a boots on the ground volunteer and convener, that I can bring, about once a quarter, 200 nonprofits together and teach them and add value and bring in speakers and then have them work together. And the miracles and the incredible things that have happened and transpired because these nonprofits have come together. They sit in the same room, they're working through things together. They are so much better together than they are alone. So that's been really incredible.
What I hear you speaking about so much that I think is so impactful and that we tend to minimize is just the power of communication. I mean, and you have a perspective of different hats, but then being able to communicate well and bring people together and then amplify that communication, it really does. That magic happens through the communication. And if it's clear communication and it has meaning, I think that there's that underlying level of love and connection that we find together, and that just it makes everything more powerful. I just think that's incredible. And I wanted to ask you, for our listeners out there, because you've talked about bringing your children, how many kiddos do you have?
Absolutely. So shockingly, I have 6 children. I'm shocked myself. And funny enough, when I get Christmas cards from families with a lot of kids, I'm like, what is that woman thinking? Who would have that many children? And they're like, oh my gosh, that's actually how many kids I have. So we have 4 girls, and then we had surprise identical twin boys who are absolutely the love and delight of our lives. So they're 9. I, like clockwork, we had kids every 2 years. And so I have Audrey, who's going to be a senior. So we're kind of getting into that next stage. I thought we were going to be in diapers and strollers for our whole life. And, we're out of that quickly. And like dominoes, they're peeling off. And so she's in the Philippines right now, actually on a service trip, which is so fun with a group. And when they were really young, of course, it was hard. And that's when we would do diaper drives, and they would come and we'd pass things out of our car to different friends experiencing homelessness downtown or something like that. And then it got to where we could all after school go to Kids Eat and do the food bags. And it was fun and it worked for them. And we could talk about what was going on. And they would come with me to a lot of our refugee families' houses, and they'd sit in car rides that were very eye-opening for them, sometimes hard things for them to hear, but I thought it was really important. And now as they're teenagers and they're busy, I just commented to my husband the other night, we've built this culture of service. Like, it is what we do. It's not another thing that we add. It's just who we are and how we spend our time. Just like if families go out to ice cream or families go on walks or they go on vacation, we are very involved in service, and people know that about us. But the older my kids get, it's been harder to come together and say, everyone come to Kids Eat and let's, put bags together. But what's been really cool is that my kids have found ways to engage in their own way. So my oldest daughter has a business called Utah All Dressed Up. And so she is the marketplace for girls to rent their prom dresses. And it's been a great little business for her. And who needs to buy a new dress for every single prom? But then she realized, as the work that we've done as a family, that there are a lot of girls in Title I schools and high schools who will never get a new dress. So she was able to get 80 dresses donated. She took them to 3 different high schools. And so that was her way of giving back, right? So it
Yeah.
just looked different. And then my other daughter is a soccer player and said, what if I went down to the school that we've always done Christmas for, and I did the after school soccer program for them? And so she started this after school soccer program for a local elementary Title I school. So they're doing it in their own way. It's not all of us together, but it's still important to them. And I love seeing them use their unique strengths, skills, capability, and then transfer it into the best way for them to give back, not just the way that I give back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and developmentally, you think you're in adolescence and then into early adulthood. And so their identities are developing. And so it's so cool that they're able to take what they've learned through that culture of giving in your family, and then it's part of their identity, their unique individual identity,
Yeah.
and then they're giving back in a way that is really, personal to them. So that's cool.
Thank you. Well, it's interesting with my oldest starting to work on her college essays. I'm like, we don't have to make something up for this. Like, we actually have real life experience in some of these questions where I think, some of us cannot have that hard, or our kids' lives are kind of easy and some are very hard. But it was like, no, we've got real stories to share, which it was kind of neat to say, we don't have to make up things that you've done or ways that you've made impact in your life. And so it's been neat to see it like actually transfer to be helping her in her future and her to see the value, right? We always knew the value was there, but she's seeing the value.
What a good gift to give your kids. But Kristin, you founded Gathering for Impact to mobilize women around community needs. How did this idea come about? And tell us more about the 12 months of family giving.
Yes. So once again, I have this incredible community online, which, you think if you have 90,000 women talking at you or sharing with you, it's a lot, but you kind of see overall themes of maybe gaps of what they're looking for, what's hard, for women. They generally tend to, be women that follow me from 35 to 65. And I started seeing that one, our kids were growing up, and that we were all, moms and working or not or whatever, and that our kids were either in school or our kids were leaving the home, and that there was this big group of us who were saying, now what? So yeah, we know about toddler tantrums and diapers and play dates. We talked to moms about sleepless nights. But then as our kids were getting a little bit older, and teenage problems are real problems, right? And they're real people. And so we kind of get a little bit more quiet. kids are out of the home, we're not home as much, we're not as needed. And I felt like there was this real gap of who is talking to us in the second season of life, where we're trying to figure out our purpose and what does our life look like post kids, and why did no one ever talk to us about this time of life? And actually, we're going to be in this season of life for quite a while, right? We child rearing years and having kids, and then there's this long period where that's maybe not front and center. And so it became very clear to me that there weren't enough voices adding value, helping these women, one, connect and come together, right? Just that gathering is so important. And then making impact. And I felt like for a while I was kind of beating the drum of service, giving back, go to the food bank, go to the food bank. And people are like, we know, Kristin, we know that you love service. This is great. And then I realized as I started forming a more, putting a structure around Gathering for Impact, which is really just this nonprofit where I do all of my convenings and gatherings and nonprofit work and all of that, was that this is making impact and it's really about contribution. And so I look at you guys as a perfect example of contributing and helping your children, advocate for your children, advocate for something that maybe a lot of people aren't talking about. There's a lot of women who are caring for elderly parents, and their contribution right now may not be out with a nonprofit, but it's caretaking for elderly parents or a special needs child. Contribution is a word that I go to more and more frequently, because all of us want to contribute. And in different seasons of our life, it's going to look really different. And so when we had kids at home, the way we contributed may have been through PTA and through soccer snacks and, whatever that may be, or through our job and paying the mortgage, paying the bills. And then as we get older, how do we kind of take that contribution and that fluid, Arthur Brooks talks about this like fluid wisdom, and move it to this crystallized wisdom where we've learned, we know a lot, we can contribute, we can find out what we're passionate about and give back or show up in different ways than we did in the first half of life. And so I just realized that as much as I love talking about little kids, that I was seeing this whole group of women who were, I would say, eager is the word I've used for them. They were eager for what's next, a little bit more. My community generally has a little bit of extra time, talent, money, space to give more. That's not the case with all women. So I'm generally talking to them and saying, come together. Let's talk. Let's bring experts. Let's talk about perimenopause. Let's talk about, great, go play tennis. But what else can we do to help a little bit more? Because that is where the richness and depth and fulfillment and purpose comes from. And so it has been just so cool to kind of, like that children's book, What Do You Do with an Idea? Like it was just an idea. And I felt like it was a gap, and it was, and it is. Now we have Mel Robbins, right? We have some people talking to us, but not a lot. And so it's been really cool. So then the 12 months of giving, once again, was me saying, what do these families need? I'm never selling anything online. It's just really about contribution and giving back. And I thought, do you know what they need and they want? Because I hear it over and over, is they want to know how to give back with their family. They want to know, where do I take my daughter, my son, my family, my extended family in June if I want to give back, right? Because we all know in the holidays, we're given a million ways to give back. And then as the year goes on, less and less people are giving back or showing up to help. And so I thought my gift last November for the holidays for my online community was the gift of a hands-on service project every single month of the year. And through my newsletter, I gave other ways, out of state people that couldn't come, in person could give back in that similar vein. So whether it was, after school care or, working with refugees or foster care, or we've done all, early childhood mental health, like we've just done everything. So every month they had a place to show up with their kids, to get their hands dirty, to learn about a cause, an organization. And it's been so cool. It has been so fun. Like no excuse, right? When you're given, here's how you give back with your family this month. You have a standing calendar invite.
So we were talking earlier about organizations like ours. I mean, we are a small organization representing a relatively small group of rare individuals. And so, Kristin, one of our organizations supports those with life-threatening, ultra-rare diseases around the world. And often philanthropists are drawn to causes where they can make the biggest impact by numbers. So I was just curious, what advice do you have to give for an organization like ours?
Yeah, that is true. I do think it's kind of like how many dollars and how many people can I affect or touch, and so that's why sometimes a lot of band-aids get more, crises get more dollars kind of thrown at them. But what I would say is, and I've seen this with other nonprofits that are kind of similar to yours, just a little bit smaller reach or very niche, right? That maybe if you haven't had a child in a hospital or a child, even special needs a little bit, but different, like you just wouldn't understand how much that affects a family and the ripple effect from there. But what I've seen work the best, and what I talk to a lot of small nonprofits about all the time is do start small. If you're blasting messaging to the whole world and the whole world doesn't care, stop blasting to the whole world. How many families do you know that are going through this that understand or care about that? And start really working with them. Let's say you have 5 families total. What can those 5 families do? What can you do in Montana to rally people who love you, who care about you, who support you? Who can they invite? So that personal connection for something like this is really, really important. Um, and then you kind of go from there. And so I'm not going to get, whatever it may be that I care about to the whole world, because the whole world doesn't care. But I know that a lot of people care about me and my son, right? Or my daughter. And then let's invite them to then invite people that they love that might come. And sometimes you'll go after people and they're never going to come and help or support or whatever it may be. So you want to make sure that you are putting your efforts and energy towards the people that do care, even if it's a smaller number. And you'll be surprised by the people that do end up caring, and a lot won't. And let them, right? Let them. That's okay. It's not going to be for everybody. But even a little bit of interest, or somebody that says, this does speak to me, and they ended up coming to the dinner. And so I would say trying to make your families that are going through this start making waves based on their family, their personal connections, and those that love and support them. And then inviting, more to the table from there. But it is, I have a couple of friends that work on this specific topic. My guess is it's different than yours, but they have found the same thing, that it's been very difficult because people say $1 million for one, but then some people get that. And so the people you go after are the people that understand that. And it is incredible, even if you start small and you have little pockets of support, it will grow. It might be smaller because your numbers just are smaller, but the amount that people care and support you and it's personal to them will be deeper connections than it would be from shouting out to the world and the world's like, okay, here's $5. So, I would really focus on the support you do have and growing that, rather than going out and harness all the support that may never come, or chasing. I've seen nonprofits chase donors for years, and it's like they're not going to do it. Find somebody else. And by the way, every nonprofit feels a scarcity. Every nonprofit feels like they're not what everybody wants to give to. So as much as you feel small, others do as well. And you do have a small population, which is true. But there are people that care. There are people, and we talked about my foundation. people do have this mission. And if it's not aligned with the mission and they tell you that, move on. I would not waste too much time with people that tell you it doesn't align with their mission, it doesn't align, or it's not personal to them. I would move on and find people that it does.
Yeah. I think in rare disease, we're kind of looking for those people that are always rooting for the ultimate underdog, because really that's what we are. I said it earlier, but it's like we are on this very lonely mountain. And
Yeah,
so it does impact our ability to have a voice that people hear. Um,
yeah.
but I am curious too, what about social media? What advice would you give to, a nonprofit like ours that has, an ultra rare disorder, small population base? What would you do in social media that might be a little bit different, to help get the word out? Is there any platform that you like, or any type of, media that you're like, this would be great for something like your organization?
I think just whatever families you do have that you work with that are going through this, um, ensuring that they are following along, that they are maybe adding, stories. Those personal stories, of course, are always so touching and helpful. Maybe that they're doing fundraisers on their own. So it's not always the organization that's fundraising, but families that can help fundraise and spread awareness. It really takes everybody sharing and inviting and putting themselves out there, whether that's through stories or sharing the mission. Um, but really just saying, if you care about this, like we need you here. We need you to show up. We need you to share this story, or to share your story, or be a contributor to this. I think even if it's small, right? Even if I don't even know how many families you guys work with right now, but that they are sharing, that's kind of all you can ask. I don't, Facebook or Instagram is probably the best. I'm not on TikTok or X or anything like that, but um, and once again, it's like, you don't need a, 100,000 people listening. Maybe you need 100 to start, and then you need 200. And then those, like the people that care about it, if you have 200 people that are listening and they really, really care, that's way more impactful than 2,000 who don't really care. So building a strong base of real support rather than kind of followers just for the sake of numbers.
Yeah, I really like that. I have this vision of inviting people into our space, and saying, what do you think? What are your thoughts about this space? What would you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like
And
that.
listening to the no's. What are the no's? Meaning we're it's not something we're going to contribute to. What are barriers? How can you overcome them? Um, those, knowing why. And I fundraise as well for policy and different things. So I'm a donor, but I also am out fundraising. And when I've had really good no's, people tell me no, and I've appreciated like how much thought they put into the no, why they're not doing it, how we may, either like definitely not going after them again, or like what if we went, talk to them about this next time. And so the more you can prod and say, I totally understand it doesn't work for you right now. Is there any spot in this, in what we're working on, that might be something that at some point you might be interested in? I'm always curious around the nose, or what are you giving to that you're interested and excited about? So I think getting curious about it, even when people are saying no, it's really, really helpful.
And that really does kind of lend into your nine giving personalities that you've coined, which I think is so fascinating. And I would love to hear you tell our audience a little bit more about the nine giving personalities, and just kind of how you came up with this idea. And we will definitely be posting a link to the quiz so that, our listeners out there can
Good.
take the quiz and identify what kind of giver you are.
Yes. So this was so fun. I was going to be tabling at a big event. It was kind of like an interfaith event, and there were going to be 4,000 people there. And they're like, Kristin, do you want a table? And, I have Gathering for Impact, but really Gathering for Impact is gathering. And I'm like, and I've actually written a cookbook since, so I would have had my cookbook now, but at the time I didn't. And I thought, I don't have anything. Like, I don't have a candle or a book or even a podcast to share at this event. And so once again, I'm like, what is the gap? What am I selling? Right? What am I talking to people about? And it's really about this idea of contribution and giving back. And I remember I was on a long flight and I just started writing down ideas. And I was like, you know what? Everybody thinks that we need to give back and go to the food bank or whatever it may be. We all think we need to give back like our neighbor or like our parents did or like the girl that we see at school. But the reality is we all have different giving personalities. And so I started looking up giving personalities, just Googling it. This is almost before, I think, AI. And I couldn't find what I was looking for, which is I'm a convener gatherer. I love to gather. I love real long sustainable change, right? Like there's different ways that I like to give back. And I look at my dad and he's a mentor teacher. He's a one-on-one coach and mentor. And he loves contributing that way. That's just not me. It's never been me. And so when I looked up giving personality, all it would respond to on Google was how to give my money. And I'm like, no, this has nothing to do with money. I don't care right now in this, specific instant, how people give their money. I want to know how they want to contribute in the world. So I ended up making a 9 different giving personalities that I think really encompass the ways that we show up in the world and can help us say, oh, no wonder showing up at the food bank every Wednesday does not speak to me. Because when we try to do something that isn't who we are, someone was like, Kristin, you need to really focus on the endangered species of the Galapagos and the dolphin. It's like, I am not an animal person. Like it wouldn't speak to me. I wouldn't be good at it. I wouldn't make real impact. Or if they're like, Kristin, you need to help build an animal shelter in your local downtown area. I'm not going to be good at it. I'm not going to show up. Where I have friends who, are obsessed with their dogs. And so I realize that we all show up differently. So a couple different ways and personalities that we could talk through. And I would love for people to take the quiz is I saw friends who show up in the world as a kindness spreader, and they are incredible friends. They develop deep friendships. And when I'm sitting around at a birthday lunch and a friend shares something hard, I love her and I go on my way, and then I go try to convene and gather and do all the stuff I do. But I have some friends who continue to show up and call the friend the next day. How are you doing? What's going on? How can I help? And really more locally and a little bit more personally and proximately, they are kindness spreaders in the world and in life. And my gosh, don't we need that? Right? Because I miss that. I miss out on those because I'm out trying to gather 300 women and talk about perimenopause or something, but we need both. A cultural enthusiast, someone that cares about the arts or the ballet or libraries, or diversity and inclusion, right? There's I hope somebody cares about that, right? I hope museums live on, or our local Ballet West continues to be able to perform. And so once again, that's actually not something that speaks to me or my foundation or our giving, but it does to other people. And I'm so grateful about that. A truth seeker, some people really want to share. You guys are probably a little bit of this where I want to share my story and our truth of what this looks like for me and my family and my child. And I want to share it. It could be through faith. It could be through experience, could be testimonies of all different types of things of what it looks like to be an LGBTQ, child in the Mormon religion, there's lots of ways that I see that manifested. And once again, thank goodness there are people out there trying to share their truth and stories to help with that. Crisis relievers. I think the one we see the most, that's the easiest and it's at our fingertips, is a crisis reliever. There's a problem, we can go and help. There's not enough food. We can do a canned food drive. Kids need jackets at a Title I school. Let's do a coat drive. So crisis reliever is probably what we see the most of, but that doesn't speak to everyone. Another one I'll end with is like a change agent, where some people say, that's great, you're doing a coat drive, but I want to understand, why do all of hundreds of thousands of kids in our state need coats? Like, I want to create real sustainable statewide or worldwide or whatever, change, and through policy, through real, real curiosity and upstream solutions. And thank goodness, right? Because kids need coats this December, but also we need women who are saying, but why do we need so many coats? And what is going on with these families? And what can I do to help them? So what I love about these giving personalities is there's not one that's more important than the other. They are equally important. And what's important is that you show up given your unique strengths, skills, talents, capabilities to say, oh, like, I want to share my story, not show up at the food bank, or I want to make sure that our library is open and not shutting down. There's a million different examples I could give, but what speaks to me, and that's what I care about, is kind of that sticky service, where people really show up and have passion, because it speaks to their soul. And so getting their hands dirty and their heart broken makes a lot more sense than showing up for the animal shelter, which you couldn't care less about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love how the nine giving personalities expands giving. It doesn't box giving in. Um, and I just think that's wonderful, because that really, it's a way that speaks to everyone, that you can show up and the way that you give is important. I really like the idea of the kindness spreader. It's like that warm sunshine that helps other people to grow, and it really is all interconnected. Yeah, it's
I think
amazing.
sometimes people think bigger is better. This is a perfect example for you guys and what you do, that more people is better. And when I mentioned a couple friends who are these kindness spreaders, because they see me in these huge events and hundreds of women, or, and they're like, I'm not seen. And you saw me for the first time, like these little tiny interactions, that's what the world is about. Like that, right? They are just as important, maybe more, than gathering 300 women, because they are like these one-on-one kindness spreaders who are improving our world, one relationship and kind word, or,
It's those connections that keep the work moving on, like building those little connections over time. So, Kristin, you serve on so many impactful organizations. How do you choose where to give your time, and how do you stay deeply involved across so many causes?
That's a really great question, and one that I think sometimes can keep people from showing up and, volunteering with an organization, or seeing that there are so many issues and so many ways you can give back. Where do you even start? And I say, just get started in something that's interesting to you. I talk a lot about sticky service and finding things that you're passionate about. Were you raised by a single mom? Do you have refugees in your neighborhood or in your kids' school? Um, is like, getting kids to read at a third grade reading level interesting to you? Or, there are so many causes, as that we can get involved in. And so I would say, just start in something that sounds interesting to you, a problem that you want to solve. I've worked with different people that help, philanthropic and charitable efforts. And one thing that I loved that they said, and this probably really applies to you and your family and your child, is that you have to love the problem, not the solution. And so when you love the problem, like you do, of helping these kiddos, when you love the problem of, I don't know what it may be, maybe policy solutions across the state, like you love that problem, the solution is going to be different, right? Nonprofits pivot and turn. And so when you love the problem, I feel like you continue to show up, rather than if you love the solution of the coat drive, or you love the solution and it ends up not being that, that's not where people stick. And so foster care is another one. I mean, I could name, 100 different things that even just meeting basic needs of families or food insecurity, housing instability. Like if you love the problem, then you are curious and you dig deep and you can really be impactful in helping out. But I have turned and pivoted and been really helpful on some, and then I've moved onto others. And so I love being curious and understanding barriers and needs and gaps, trying to fill them, and then bringing other people along with me so that it's not just one woman. I'm not just out there trying to do it, but I involve my kids. Involve my neighbors. I, invite people online. And so, and then sometimes that gets sticky for them. We went to the Christmas box house where we had 100 families come and paint and weed and, which is kids in state care, state custody. And so many families loved it and have gone back. So that's my goal. Like I just love that. That's what makes me so happy.
Yeah, I love the idea of sticky service because I bet when you're passionate about it, it can have that ripple effect and make it meaningful to other people as well.
Yeah.
So, and you had mentioned, you've gone back and forth and flip flopped on some, service projects. Do you feel like your focus has changed over the years?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I started, out of the back of my car, dropping off Egg McMuffins in a local park that had a lot of friends experiencing homelessness. I saw something online that someplace needed diapers. And so I filled my trunk with diapers and had friends donate. And so it has absolutely changed from when I had, little tiny kids, what I could do. My interests have changed. I now care more about, sustainability, that we could run coat drives or canned food drives forever, but how can we have some sustainable solutions? How can we look upstream and start asking the question of why is this happening? Rather than just putting a Band-Aid on it. And Band-Aids are needed, and so, yes, I am still changing, and I have been pretty open with different nonprofits and groups I work with to let them know I am here to shine my spotlight on you, use my megaphone, use my platform, but I'm not going to stick with one nonprofit forever. And so I really like to kind of share that light around so that people, like for instance, my 12 months of giving this year, I provided hands-on family service activities every single month of the year. So I wanted to expose families to 12 different nonprofits doing incredible work, from schools to single mother, to early childhood mental health. It was a wide array, but I wanted families to be to get a firsthand look of what are these organizations doing, and is it something that's interesting to them?
Yeah, and you've kind of given them that variety too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you feel like you're leaning more towards policy solutions over time?
I do. I work with a policy project on policy solutions. I think that is one way to attack different things going on, but I think I really like a multi prong approach. So I think public private partnerships, working through policy is great, but you work really, really, really hard, on one policy. And for me, it can feel a little bit hands off. I do like to be in the weeds. I do like to be with families. I do like to have it be a little bit more proximate, where I'm understanding things on a deeper level. And so that is something that I'll probably always be engaged in, but not full time. I think using my skills and talents and kind of my unique approach to things, that policy is one thing, but I actually think I need to find myself in other solutions as well.
Yeah. You like the boots on the ground
Yeah,
approach.
I really do. And I want to bring other families. I want to bring other women. I want to encourage that, and to show them how incredible it can be to give back and to contribute in your community. The way it has for me in my life.
Yeah. And as a mom of six and someone involved in so many initiatives, how do you make space for your family, service, and yourself?
Yes, that's a great question. I would say it was a lot easier when my kids were young. I would bring them to a lot of things. And I have service activities and all different things. And I find that the older they get, the more scattered we are. And my husband and I actually both, as my oldest is a senior, turned to each other this year and we said, we have to insist that they continue to come and serve with us. And this is a part of our family culture. It is who we are. And yes, they're busy, but this is something that we can't let go of and let practices and social things get in the way of these teenagers. I think it's really important to keep. So one, I really do try to include them in as much as I can. I have the privilege of this kind of being my quote unquote day job. And so I'm not trying to pay the mortgage or pay my bills. Like, this is how I spend my day when my kids are at school. And so I feel really grateful for that. And I take stewardship, over what we've been given, that we are able to step back. So there is a feeling of that, like, I need to do this. I think it's great that women are out playing tennis or pickleball or doing different things. But for me, I feel a weight of having to step in and help and just do whatever I can every day. Many years ago, we made the choice that this is kind of how we were going to lead out in our family. And I make that choice every day. And I think it makes me a better role model for my kids. And so in that way, yeah, always sacrificing something. So I'm not always there for the soccer game because I'm, doing something in community, or if I'm, at the soccer game, I'm missing something that's going on important in the community. And so I just try to balance that. I'm okay with not always being at everything. My kids don't expect me to be at 100% of pickups and games and all of the stuff. They know that there's really important stuff that, my husband and I have that we prioritize. They are the top priority. Absolutely. And then my husband supports me 100%. And that makes all the difference. I mean, he shows up, he supports, the other night I had an event and he was taking the kids and took over. And so I couldn't do it. I definitely couldn't do it without his support, for sure. And then for myself, I get really good sleep. I exercise every single morning, which is where I come up with almost all of my harebrained ideas. Just this morning, I now have this whole new project that I'm working on because endorphins and sweating and working out gets my brain working. So it was funny. I texted friends about some service project I was doing, and one of my friends jokingly responded like, "Oh, well, if we were all like you and Mother Teresa and doing good." And, she went off, and it was so funny and humorous. And I said, "Hey, I want you to know I yin as hard as I yang," meaning like I take care of myself. I make sure that my needs are met. I'm not just out trying to save the world. I am also ensuring that that I am taken care of. I have always prioritized. I watched my mom do it. She prioritized her health, her sleep, her social, her friends, her marriage. And I absolutely do the same. And so maybe I don't show that as much, but it was pretty funny. And she said, "I know you do. I know you do." And that's the truth. I do. Because you can only give what you have. And I would say I keep a pretty full cup.
Yeah, and I think it's such a gift to your kids, one, to see, those values in action, service and including them, and them learning the routine and being hands-on, but it's also important for them to see that balance that you're creating in your own life. You need that balance for a healthy lifestyle. So it's good for them to see, hey, mom can't play on the floor with me 24/7, you
Yep,
know. So,
absolutely. It's true.
what has been your most enjoyable project that you've worked on to date?
So the most enjoyable was one of my first, and it was a Utah period project. It's where we were able to, through policy, get pads and tampons in all bathrooms, public school K through 12 bathrooms. Me, my friend Emily McCormick, and Mary Catherine Perry with the policy project, we at that time came together and sat around, a well-loved kitchen table and figured out a way to ensure that kids had what they needed at school. Girls did. And I had started working with the food bank on this, and I was getting, fundraising for period products across the state. And then when Emily came to me and said, "Let's do something that's more sustainable and statewide," it was such a cool opportunity to venture into this, policy of, oh my gosh, we couldn't fundraise for the whole state if we tried. And so that there is a policy element in that. Now, by the way, I was just at the food bank this week ensuring, we're 7 to 8 million period products every year across 220 pantries. And that's still really important to me. But there's a multi-prong approach once again, where we're making sure that girls in school are staying in school, that they're active in sports, that they have what they need. And then that the food banks, have it when families are going to pick up food. And then, we worked on businesses. So that was really cool. And I would say now I have something called Building Bridges, where I bring nonprofits together once a quarter. And it has been so exciting for me to see when they come together, how they start working together and stop operating in silos. But the miracles that happen when they come together, when they work together, they get to know each other. It's been really, really cool.
That's awesome. Do you bring those charities together with those in need, or are you getting charities to collaborate?
Yeah. So I'm getting the charitable organizations, the not-for-profits, all coming together and trying to add value to them as leaders in the nonprofit space, in their own lives and in their organization. So we started out focusing on vulnerable kids, those charities that worked for those, but we've really expanded where we have everything from everything, wells in Africa to refugees, to the YWCA, really large nonprofits, to new nonprofits that are just starting. We just met and had a specialist come in and talk about AI and how can we do better in the nonprofit space, working like we need to use AI, but we also need to be careful. So I'm always just trying to bridge that, bridge nonprofits one to each other, to work to each other. And then I'll bridge them to donors so that they understand what does it look like to sit at a boardroom and make decisions on grants. And I will bridge them with social media experts. How can we do better on social media, or AI experts, or bridge, as one nonprofit said, like you bridge us to people that we wouldn't have access to. And then, the unintended consequence is that they're all in the same room. They're talking, they're working together, and they end up really being able to help each other and feeling like they can collaborate rather than compete. Because I think sometimes we feel like we're competing in the nonprofit space.
Oh yeah. It does feel like that.
Yeah.
But that collaboration and that networking is so important too at the same time.
Yes.
So,
Yes, exactly.
Are there any projects or ideas you're especially passionate about this year? You had just mentioned, building bridges, but I've seen that you have a new cookbook out and you're doing cooking classes. Tell us about that.
Yes. So my parents are getting a little bit older, and growing up, my mom and dad were big gatherers and connectors and hosts. And, we're just very involved in the community. We always had, people over and hosted parties and things like that. And so it's kind of this love letter to my family. And my mom and sisters and brother and I, and then all of the, extended family there came together, and we have, I think, 85 or 86 recipes. It's called Life at Our Table. And we did have a very idyllic life growing up in Walnut Creek, California. But in our family tree, we have a lot of mental health and a lot of substance abuse and addiction and other really hard things, including my brother, who's struggled with addiction for the last 2 decades of his life, but sober now and doing really well with his wife and 3 children. And so when we wrote the book, we wanted to focus on gathering and connecting. And the tagline really is that connection is prevention. And you could use that in a lot of different ways, but it's true. And so all proceeds goes to the Huntsman Mental Health Institute, who are just taking on mental health and substance abuse and addiction and all of those things in a very disruptive approach here where I live, and is really a lighthouse for other states in the country and how they're doing it and what they're doing. And so, I'm always wanting to gather. So we wrote this book, and it's gone extremely well. It sold out like the first 3 weeks or something. I think the mission was so meaningful to people, as my brother spoke and I spoke, the number of people that would get in line and say, me too, my mom, my sister, my uncle, A lot of us have that in our families. And so the cooking classes were a fun way to gather around the cookbook and raise more money for Huntsman mental health. And so we've raised over $200,000 and, on this one little book. And so it's cool to see what just one little cookbook could do when you keep asking, you keep getting curious, you keep saying, what more can we do with this? Um, it's been so exciting. It's been bigger and cooler than I ever could have dreamed.
That's incredible. That is so awesome that you were able to just raise that from this idea, hey, we have this cookbook. Let's just do these classes too.
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
it was so fun.
That's awesome. And what advice do you have for someone who wants to get more involved in the community but feels unsure where to start?
That's such a great question. And I actually have a framework around this. It could be a whole nother podcast. And I do think one day it will be a book, because that is really, especially women in kind of a second season of life, or kids are in school, or they're trying to find their purpose. Maybe their kids don't need them as much, or, their career they don't want that to be 100% of their life. And so I think really starting to follow along on what's going on in your community, whether it be on Instagram, sign up for newsletters, check in what's going on, whether it's with your local school or shelter, and just start asking questions, start signing up for things, and really start paying attention to what fires you up, what is exciting, what problem do you love. So for instance, I worked with this, it's called My Hometown, and it's really about how do we raise communities, struggling communities, in a lot of vulnerable ways. I was at a lunch one day for that, and I am in love with that problem. The next day, I was in a lunch for us. It's the Great Salt Lake, and it's a massive problem in Utah for 100 different reasons. And I sat there in this lunch for trying to rescue the Great Salt Lake, and I thought, I don't love this problem. I'm so glad someone's doing this.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to keep showing up for the Great Salt Lake. Someone needs to. Don't get me wrong. It's a massive problem. So I'm going to shift towards where my interest is, what's interesting to me. I think it then start showing up and start signing up and volunteering and seeing do you want to go and sort canned food? Do you want to go sew blankets, or do you want to show up in a different way? There's lots we can use our skills, talents, and resources and lots of different ways. And we can be helpful. We really can in so many different ways, but especially when we show up using our passions, using our unique talents, getting curious and saying, what are my strengths? What can I do? And then offering those, and then letting the work teach you, but also pivoting when you see something else come up. Go follow that. And what's neat about contribution in life is that there's always something to do, and you can change. And if something no longer lights you up, that's okay. Keep looking, and really the journey is the destination when you are trying to figure out how to contribute in this world of ours.
Yeah, and you've given a lot of women a variety of options of where to start too with Gathering for Impact. So is that a good place to start?
Yeah. KristinAndrus.com is my website. Every month on my newsletter, I give, ways to contribute, ways to show up. Last month, we were with Utah Refugee Connection. Next month, we're with Live Your Dream Foundation, which is scholarships for single moms. And so, I think, and then showing kids that and saying, hey, do we want to do this one or this one? And even that discussion around which one is more interesting to our family would be such a cool conversation to have with your family. So yes, follow along on my Instagram. I'm constantly sharing, it's just Kristin Andrus. I'm constantly sharing ideas and ways to show up, whether you're in state, out of state, wherever you are in your community. We can definitely all pitch in, and it's needed, and it really will be the best part of your life. Families need us, kids need us.
Yeah. And it's so nice, to get people involved in these programs, but when you're having families do it, that's
Yeah.
almost a greater service to the family
Oh yeah.
when you're getting everybody involved and you're passing that on to them.
Absolutely. My daughter has a dress rental business. She noticed, once again, like a gap that why are all these girls buying a new homecoming dress, a new prom dress, a new this? Like we should, you wear it one time. And then I left it around, was it the end of school or the holidays? It was for one of the dances. She said, I want to give back, right? So like in her brain, because she knows what we do, or I don't know why, she was like, I want to help like 3 or 4 different high schools and have everybody donate dresses, and we're going to bring them to the high school. So like that's a kind of thing where it's not what you do, but it's who you are, and it's a way that your brain thinks. And what better thing can we model for our kids than to get out of our own way, right? Most of our kids are entitled, and just kind of helping them see outside themselves. It's truly the best gift we could ever give them.
Exactly. Kristin, thank you for joining us today and giving us a better picture of what service can really look like. You've reminded us that impact isn't just about writing big checks, but seeing real needs, getting involved, and inviting others to join. If you'd like to learn how to become more involved in your community, check out our show notes below to see how you can follow Kristin Andrus and her organizations. This has been These Kids Can't Wait. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on These Kids Can't Wait. Every story shared brings us one step closer to awareness, advocacy, and action. If you've been inspired, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode.
To learn more about the Lost Enzyme Project or donate to the cause, you can visit our website, Instagram, or Facebook page. Those links will be provided in the show notes below. Thank you again, and remember, these kids can't wait, but together, we can make a difference.